Hello, this is Greg Allison with Green Greg's Garden and Worm Farm, and today again I bring you Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we're going to be talking about what's going on here in the United States and around the world with the spread of COVID-19. And it seems to me that all this happening is not what is seen. There is a lot of questions about data that's being reported, not only from overseas, but in my humble opinion, there's some serious questions about the data, what we is passing for data for what's going on here. And particular, I would like to say there's one of the things that concerns me is I'm understanding now that the CDC sent test kits to all 50 states, and now they've come out and announced that only 3 states got test kits that actually work, that their algorithm for testing says that they're testing people that have come from principally Wuhan or people that are showing symptoms, yet they're going around and saying there's no community in the community spread of the virus. And how could you possibly know that if you're not testing for that, if you're only testing people that show symptoms? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that stuff out, right? I might know something about that, my friend. So there's a lot of questions about what's going on, about the kind of numbers we have. And what I worry about is we're getting a false sense of security. And the reason I worry about that is that if you're not testing everyone, the people are coming over, some that we know may have been exposed or not testing. For an example of that, maybe I'm spilling all my beans here at the beginning of the show. 14 people were flown over who had been on the Diamond Princess cruise ship who are positive for the COVID-19. Mm-hmm. They were supposed to have had charter flight come over, but instead the State Department, because they were not showing symptoms, it was obviously safe to stick them on a passenger airline with everyone else, which I've always said the last thing in the world I would want to do is be flying back from overseas in an airline with somebody that might be contaminated. Oh, we got them in the back and there were sheets or something. They might be saying they had them contained, but excuse me, the air flow through the aircraft is universal. And we know this is an aerosolized, potentially airborne infection. You got flight attendants walking up and down, serving everybody, just like you had on the Diamond Princess cruise ship. We know that people were contained in the rooms on the Diamond Princess cruise ship, and it spread like crazy. So how are we supposed to feel good that there were people on this airline who aren't being monitored, who may have been exposed, who've gone everywhere in the country? We've got 200 cases of people being watched in the Atlanta area under self-containment. And there's all these other cases of people that call in to Paul's show and talk about cases in Westchester County, I believe it is, New York, and other places. I think the reports were 23 infected from a nurse in a hospital there, Dr. Paul. And there's 73, 7,500 people are under self-quarantine in Southern California. There are just tons of reports, tons of cases. People are still out and about moving around. People that contact these people are out and about moving around. And it may be 3 weeks before anything surfaces. What I'm concerned about and what I want you to talk to is, what are we going to be looking at 3 weeks from now? Is this thing going to suddenly explode and people are going to be getting sick everywhere? How long is it before people really start getting sick? And when does the individual in this country really need to start worrying about this? When do they need to start asking themselves, should I go to work today or should I stay home?
Well, just to make a clarification, the Westchester County area in New York, it's 26 that are quarantined. And in Buffalo, we believe that there are 6 confirmed COVID-19 cases that the CDC is not reporting in New York. But with that said, we have to look at it from 2 different perspectives: what's really happening and what is being published. I believe that we're going to start seeing a major jump in cases in the United States once more of the states receive the kits, which is approximately a week and a half from now, maybe a little less. All right. So in about a week, once they start testing.
Let's clarify a point. You said see number of cases. What you mean is reported cases, not actual sicknesses.
Right. So there's this right. So we're going to see at least tested COVID positive cases, a big jump in the data set in a week or a week and a half, because that's when the municipalities will have those test kits. Because like you said, only 3 states, and those states have limited supplies. And it's California, I think it's California, Florida, and New York. It's California, New York, or Illinois. But either way, there's only 3 states, and it's not covering the whole state. It's limited. It's limited supplies. So once there's more of these test kits, the point is once there are more test kits across the nation, you're going to start seeing a larger growth rate of actual confirmed cases. Now, if you listen to what's on the ground, you are hearing that there are more and more people having upper respiratory infections over and beyond the normal flu season. This is coming from the insurance companies that are calling me, the people that process these things. They've been alerted, these people that work for the claims processing at the insurance companies, of certain alert procedures to be on the lookout by the CDC. And we have anecdotal evidence, especially in Texas and New York, that there are individuals that are coming down with serious upper respiratory infections. And if the containment for these, most of these cases, let's say about 5-6 of the cases are mild. So here's the problem. They're mild, so they fly under the radar. They're not tested for COVID-19. They're assumed to be flu, and they go back, to their community, and now you have an R, value of 6. Right now, the data is showing 6 or higher. So, but, again, that's, might be data noise too, data sampling noise. But even if it's 4,
well,
it's
we
still
can't
a lot.
know. How do we know what the numbers
Right.
being?
So the doctors, the doctors cannot say for sure when they're letting these somewhat mild patients out of the ER, and they go back to the community, that it's not COVID-19 because they're not testing for it.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Now, we do know that this is flu season and the flu is going around. So there are people among us that actually have the flu. And in fact, I run a worm farm here, and I've got a young couple that just showed up today who had told me a couple of days ago they had the flu. Now they're saying they're better. Well, guess what? I'm having them wear N95 mask. I bought a fair supply. I'm having to wear those and gloves, and they're working outside. One of them I would have let come in the house to assist me with a little bit of admin work with taxes, but I'm going to leave her out there working with her boyfriend on the worm farm today because she can do that, and I just don't want that in the house. Right. They are wearing gloves. They're wearing the N95 mask. So I'm hoping, and I'm guessing just numerically, the odds and probability is that they actually still have the regular flu, since that is more prevalent right now. But you do have to worry because these people are starting to spread around. This stuff is going to spread, and the cases are going to multiply very fast, with the R naught being a high number. So I'm thinking right now I'm probably safe, but a week or 2 from now, I ought to take an entirely different view on
it. It's a good point. If you're in a seed center where there are already cases, and knowing that this thing could be dormant for 24 days, you have to have higher precaution. But if you're out in the country where there's no seed centers around you, the probability is that it's probably, it's just
That's
probably
what I'm
the flu.
thinking.
Or some, you could get coronavirus, but it's the common cold version. It's the benign version,
So
not Wuhan, not the COVID-19. So people need to realize that if they test, their local hospital can test for influenza and standard coronavirus. That's standard. They need those special test kits because it's immune assay. It's like a PCR immune assay. So people that don't know this, PCR kind of magnifies the RNA. All right, that's in the swab.
Explain PCR.
Okay, PCR is polymerase chain reaction. So you get samples, but sometimes the signal is so weak for the immune assay that you have to magnify it. So you have to multiply. So you put it in these polymerases, and it multiplies the RNA, and then you can put it in an immune assay, and they have like an antibody that's been specially designed to attach to certain areas of this RNA. And then it's fluorescent. And then a big fluorescent signal would say, oh, you have it. If you don't see the fluorescent signal, you don't have it. That's how they do it. But it takes time to do this. But, and part of the reason why the test kits weren't working is that I believe that the immune assay part of it was failing. The PCR part of it was okay, but the immune assay part of it was not working. So they had to, you know, send better kits out. But the thing is if they're not testing for COVID-19, there is no way that the medical community knows for sure when they let out these patients out of the ER or just, you know, your general physician's office, that they're not infecting others in the community. And there is the big problem. That's the big problem. That's how the transmission is going to take place in the United States. Right there is the transmission mechanism.
It's the people that are released, like you said, but it's also the people that they've been exposed to, the people that are coming back from, that have come back from China, Wuhan district before they clamped down, the people that were on this aircraft, and the shoddy techniques of the government in handling this. I mean, it was very shoddy of the State Department to put 14 known positive cases of COVID-19 on a civilian aircraft with uninfected people who probably unbeknownst to them were flying all the way across the Pacific Ocean with infected people in a small camp.
Craig, this is what's weird about this.
That would make me
this story is weird because they were tested in Japan with the COVID-19 kits. The ones that tested positive stayed in Japan. That's protocol. And then these individuals that did not test positive at that moment in time were allowed to be boarded on that plane. Okay. Then they tested the individuals in flight. And those 14 cases that you're talking about tested positive in flight.
Oh, I thought they were positive before they got on. I knew they had been positive, but
no. If they were tested positive in Japan, the protocol is that they stay in Japan.
Okay, but they totally missed.
Now here's the problem. It could have been that they knew that they were tested positive, and for some reason they wanted them on that plane. I don't know why, but they broke protocol. They broke protocol if they tested positive in Japan and were put on that plane. What I understood was they were tested in mid-flight.
Okay, so they had the test kits to test them on mid-flight. There was question about the way things were tested in Japan. We know there's false negatives in the test systems. So my question is, why in the devil didn't you use those test kits to test them before you put them on a flight with all these civilians?
Well, that's the thing. Is that's the point I'm making. They did do that. They tested in Japan right before, and then they did a mid-flight test. And I'm surprised that I could see maybe 1 out of 300, but 14 out of 300 in 6 hours, because the flight is a 12 to 15 hour flight. So you're talking in a 6 hour difference that 14 out of 300 people ended up getting positive. Well, that proves to you that when they test for COVID and it's testing negative, you got a good chance of still transmitting it in the society. That's the big point that I'm making here. And that most likely our healthcare individuals already have it. And they just don't know.
This is why I talked about false positives, false negatives.
Yeah.
These are important things in the world of instrumentation and aircraft and spacecraft avionics with your sensors when they're testing and measure things. You have to be able to discern, is the measurement you're getting a false positive, false negative, before you make an executive decision to do something in your flight protocol and your safety systems. These are things, so you need redundancy in your testing. You don't just do one test, and you have to have some means of knowing is your test good. That's why we use multiple sensors in our avionics systems. And because we have to be able to even disqualify sensors that may not be reporting well, and test kits can be no better. So, you know, for my avionics system, I may have 4 or 5 sensors out there measuring one thing, and they'll have a voting logic. You'll disqualify bad sensors and look at what's good. That's how we do it in avionics. So why aren't we
Yeah,
doing
I
that
don't
with
think
the health
that, I
system?
don't think the immune assay, you know, has a redundancy built into it. I
Well,
don't know. I
before you
don't
put
know for
people
sure, but I don't think it does.
before you put people on a civilian aircraft and put the whole population in that aircraft at risk, the people who are going to get off that aircraft and
You're
walk
making a
all
good
amongst
point.
the population, and not only that, they're getting off at the various stops and going to the restroom, going here and going there, leaving viral particles on surfaces where they can survive 9 days and get picked up by somebody else walking through.
This is what they should have done is instead of taking, this is where they made the mistake in Japan. Instead of taking them off of the boat because they tested negative at that time, and then they transported, they should have had an interim staging area for maybe 3 days, then put them on the plane. They didn't do that interim staging area. And this is kind of like just another data point of incompetence when it comes to the health system or the health departments. And that's why I believe that the infections are already there. It's just under the radar. It's under the radar for a few things. One, they're not showing the symptoms. They think it's maybe just the flu, or they know and they're not publishing the data, because I think that's what's happening with Buffalo.
So that's what I worry about. My concern right now is that we have more cases than we realize of actual human beings here in the United States traveling around freely up and down the freeways, going to the restrooms, gas stations, restaurants, and leaving particles behind. They're picked up by other people traveling that are disseminating throughout our communities. That this stuff is moving around in this country today. And in a couple, 3 weeks, a lot of people will be infected. And at some point, a week or 2 later, it's going to start showing up. So I don't know exactly how long it's going to be before it starts showing up. But once it starts showing up, it may be too late. The cat's out of the bag. Out of control.
There's a couple things I wanted to add to that. One is that most people don't understand the severity of the 26 cases that are quarantined in Westchester County. Westchester County is one of the more wealthy counties in upstate New York that travels into Manhattan.
Yeah.
They work in Manhattan. They work in the 5 boroughs. So if you have 26 confirmed 26 cases that are
still traveling to Manhattan.
No. The point is that if they're quarantining them, they've been walking around the society before the quarantine.
Oh yeah.
And the individuals that they were exposed to, a lot of the people that live in Westchester County travel into Manhattan, and people that travel into Manhattan they're from Long Island, they're from Brooklyn, they're from Queens, they're from Connecticut, they're from New Jersey, they're from Staten Island.
Yeah, when I go in here and look, it don't even show anything in New York. It shows Boston.
Yeah. So here's the thing: the thing is that New York City most likely has it because of the cases that are suspected in Westchester County. And like you said, in about 3 weeks, you're going to see the big numbers popping up in New York City, and then there's going to be the big question is how are they going to quarantine Manhattan and all of New York City? Because everyone is traveling into Manhattan, and then everyone comes back out at night. So you have this huge transmission mechanism that's taking place.
Well, Manhattan is a nexus. It's like all roads go to Rome, and in America, you get all these people flying in and out of this big metropolitan area. You've got trains in and out. You've got people driving in and out.
That you're making a good point, because Wuhan is similar. Wuhan was a central hub to get to other areas of China. So New York is very similar in that case. Another thing is Chicago. Chicago is another big hub. So I think New York has it. It's just not showing up in the data. Yeah.
the airport in Atlanta is the busiest airport in the world, by the way.
Yeah. I'm concerned about people don't really realize, there's only 26 people and it's in Westchester County. But Westchester County, the people that live there, a lot of them work in Manhattan, and they travel they travel the Metro North train system to get in, and then they get right at Grand Central, and everyone's going in and out of Grand Central, so they're getting infected.
It
just goes everywhere.
On one side
it goes everywhere from there.
Yeah.
So there's a huge transmission mechanism with this. Now, I'm predicting this. Again, once the kits get to the local areas, you're going to start seeing a lot more confirmed cases because they're just not testing for COVID-19 because they can't. Okay, that makes sense. I'm really concerned that once we start seeing the hundreds of cases start to balloon out in certain cities like Los Angeles, certain hospitals, when they're at that 100 patient level, I think that local healthcare system is going to start to break down, and that people's healthcare, even though it's similar as an analogy, even though we have electricity and we're living in a modern 21st century, you can easily snap back to the 12th century when you lose that electricity. Same thing with the medical care. We have 21st century medical care, but once your doctors get sick or your nurses or you don't have enough medical supplies, or they just can't service the individuals because it's overrun by sick people, that system breaks down, and now you're in the 17th century. The same issue. And people don't realize the fragility of the medical departments.
Our entire society is far more fragile than.
And you're an expert at this. I mean, I'm worried about the nuclear power here, because if you start having shutdowns and having supply chain problems, and people can't get to work, what does that mean with the nuclear power that we have?
Okay, everybody worries about the reactor. Let me tell you something. The reactors are nothing. At least they can inject boron in the reactors and shut down the active process, and the results are inside a containment building.
Is that a permanent shutdown when they do that?
Oh, once you inject the boron, they don't want to do that sometimes because it actually destroys the plant permanently.
Right.
So that's a last-ditch measure, and it should have been done in a few cases, like in Fukushima, where they didn't do that. They were, because sometimes operators just really don't think it's that bad, and they don't want to destroy the reactor, but they can inject massive amounts of boron into it. And it's my understanding that will destroy the reactor. Now, what I'm most worried about, reactor or no reactor, is the spent fuel rod pools. The spent fuel rod pools, now see, in a nuclear power plant, you've got this containment building. It's like a dome, like this heavy cup here. It's got, a good bit of concrete around it. Well, just beside it is this little building that's got a sheet metal roof on it. They transport the fuel in and out with cranes. And that little building with a sheet metal roof has got a reactor a fuel cooling pool in it, where they keep mostly spent fuel rods and fuel that will be transmitted into the plant. Now, just the spent fuel rods alone that's still in the cooling pools, once they cool beyond a certain period, maybe 10 years, they can remove them and put them in dry casks where they're less hot and can be maintained without having to have cooling water put on them. The problem is that in these cooling pools, there is something on the order of 80 metric tons of hot radioactive material. And that material has to have water pumped on it continuously. Now, they keep it under about 20 foot of water, but it evaporates about 160 gallons a minute. If your water pumping systems break down, that's going to evaporate off. If it evaporates off, these fuel rods are clad in zircaloy, which is a zirconium cladding. Now, zircaloy by itself probably would not burn, except this stuff is rich in hydrogen and from the inside of the reactor where it's been irradiated, and it actually burns on contact with air. Instantaneously burns on contact with air. And I had one nuclear operator tell me, "Oh, it does not." But I actually have the test reports where they tested this at Los Alamos. Actually, Sandia National Laboratories tested this. Let me back up. This is Sandia that ran the test. And even the stuff that was not enriched in the reactor was burning in contact with air. So what happens is essentially all this stuff goes up in smoke. So 80,000 metric tons, that's just a big number in most people's head. To put it in perspective, every warhead on Earth has maybe something on the order of 40 pounds of enriched materials. And you've got about 14,000 warheads. So you've got something on the order of 380 to 400 times the capacity of a full-scale nuclear war, just waiting for the lights to go out to go up in smoke. Right. Not a pretty picture, my friend. Not a pretty picture. Right. So that is something to be worried about considerably. And you have to, Greg, they have backup generators at these plants. Yes, they do. But when the fuel can't be delivered because the supply chain breaks down, because when it takes power to
or the people not being able to go.
If the people aren't going to
working,
bingo. Yeah. If the people aren't going to work, you don't have smart operators maintaining the systems. Things are breaking down. People aren't going to work to maintain the gas stations for the trucks to roll. People don't want to drive trucks. How do you maintain the supply chain that keeps the fuel there when the grid goes down? And the grid will eventually go down if you have people maintaining it. We've got our power grid is the most sophisticated machine ever devised by man, but it is old. The way our power grid works, Paul, is it instantaneously produces the exact amount of power that's being consumed at that instant in time. And this is a grid composed of several major grids. There's three major regional grids, east, west, and Texas, basically. But within that, there's many other smaller grids, smaller companies, and distributors. It's a cast of thousands that are all tied together into one big intricate machine that everything has to work almost perfectly on. If you get out of kilter a little bit, you get cascading power failures like you did up in when those trees hit the tree branches hit a power line in Ohio some years back and caused a major outage in the north east. So what happens when, and that was partially operator error. What happens when you're missing a lot of operators, a lot of your key people? What happens when you can't get the spare parts from China to maintain systems? What happens is our whole system starts unraveling. Our grid is at risk. And the biggest risk is in a cascading failure scenario, too much power gets switched to a lot of these very high voltage, long distance power transformers. These guys can burn out. They're custom built. They're 200 to 400 tons each, big as a house. And there's like only 11 of those what's called snap-on cars that can move them around on rail. There's very few truck trailers and probably a similar order number. They're if the grid is operating where you can still do still have your money, which is digital, can still use your computer systems to make your orders. Everything is computerized now. Nothing uses the old systems. So if you can make your order and get it on your dock, it takes 18 months from the time you order one of these to the time you get it on your dock, Paul. 18 months. And then you got to install it. Well, you got to have the people. You have to have the materials. You have to have the machines, the mechanisms, the spare parts. There's got to be fuel involved in this whole process. There's such an intricate web of things you have to have for all this to work. But if all that were working, it would take you 18 months to replace that. So if you have, there's 9 critical substations. If they went down, they could take our entire grid down. So it doesn't take a lot to do permanent damage. If you cause cascading failures, it can take years to replace these. If you wind up burning out a lot of these, and if things were working where you could replace them, it might take 10 years. The Congressional EMP Task Force, Electromagnetic Pulse, concluded in their study some dozen years ago that if the grid went down, we would lose 9 out of 10 people in this country within a year. They did not take into account these spent fuel rod pools. They assumed that farmers grew their own food that they consume. I have gone around and surveyed and discovered that's not the case anymore. Now, they may be growing food, but it's market food, and they're not really prepared on the farm, on these mega farms to grow their own. The ones that are prepared are the homesteaders, the people that watch my channel. And that's why I produce this channel. I realized the fragility of our society. I realized that we needed to be more resilient. And that's what a lot of what drove me to raise worms and start this. I'm an engineer, I'm an electrical engineer. I work space systems, but I'm in the homestead, I'm in the gardening, I'm into organic growing. I teach people how to eat from the weeds and the trees. And so what I'm telling you is that right now, because we're facing a chronic shortage due to supply chain disruption, you better prepare. As people aren't in the stores, even if they don't put a quarantine upon us, I am expecting people to be self-quarantining. You're going to find great shortages. Some people make runs on stuff you may not want to.
It's already happening. It's already happening. I'm seeing it at Whole Foods in New York. So we're running out of food.
So people right now need to go buy long-term food storage food. And just so happens I got great deals. You can go to preparewithgreg.com. Preparewithgreg, Greg.com. And you'll see a link in this video later. And I have it on some other.
Because you and I are both coming from an engineering background. Yours is an electrical, NASA kind of stuff. Mine was more automotive Detroit. Yeah. We're system thinkers.
Right.
And if you just look at the nuclear power issue, you can have system failure from multiple modes, either because of supply chain, either because of electrical issues. It could be personnel. And that's the big problem, is that people need to realize that this biological crisis is a black swan event that can cause major havoc in our society, economically, biologically, and possibly electrical and nuclear. We could have a nuclear accident. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. We could have a nuclear accident because of this.
Grid goes down, you have over 100 nuclear accidents eventually.
And no one's talking about this in China because they have a lot of nuclear power. So what's going on? Are they on the verge of a Chernobyl event or a Fukushima? No one's talking about that in the mainstream media, and I'm really concerned. I've never been a big fan of nuclear power because of the waste. It's 20,000 year waste. That's not clean energy.
The people who are all scared of carbon have suddenly decided that nuclear is great.
I know. I remember at the CFR, the Central of Foreign Relations, they had they had this panel about nuclear power, saying it was green. And I was watching it, and you could put your comments in while they were having their conference, their seminar. And I said, nuclear power is not clean because of the waste that it produces. And people responded back, oh, yes, it's clean. It reduces carbon dioxide. I was like, you're missing the point here. I'd rather have coal plants that aren't even clean coal plants, because at least that will go away. When you make nuclear waste, you're stuck with it for 10 to 20,000 years. That's a problem. That's not clean.
How do you make? It means you got to maintain some kind of society or priesthood to watch over it, right?
And not only that, with the coal plants, you can tear them down and build something over it.
Right.
After you treat the area, you can't do that on a nuclear plant. It's stuck. That is locked down for a long, long time as a nuclear facility.
One of my best friends buried the reactor core of the nuclear power plant that we had at Fort Greely. So he's here in the Huntsville area now, but I met him at Fort Greely back in.
Does he glow in the dark?
No, he don't need a flashlight to see where he's going.
Right. But I just it's a problem, and people aren't thinking that it's not just a virus. They have cognitive dissonance. They think it's no big deal. But you and I, because we're system thinkers, because of our engineering background, we're seeing this potential system failure as it moves through the country.
That's exactly what I'm looking at, what I'm seeing. And see, that don't occur to a lot of people. They see everything in isolation. They think everything is linear. Nothing's linear in reality.
Right.
And they don't see how things interrelate. They don't see the interconnectivity. I did a video talking about the fragility of our society, Paul, and because back in the 1950s, someone had the brilliance to write a little treatise called I Pencil. And the premise of I Pencil, and it was a first story account told by a number 2 pencil. And it was all about the whole idea that no one person, back when they wrote this in the 1950s, knows how to build a number 2 pencil. Well, people think, oh, that's ridiculous. It's easy. All you got to do is. But once you read this story, you come to appreciate that it's absolutely true. And it takes a cast of thousands to do everything required in the entire supply chain of how you pull this together.
Right.
And
right.
today, we're far more complex than that. And that's the point of the video I made. But there was a beautiful case to be made back in the 1950s. Look where we're at today. Of course, you know, with all our information technology and things we have, all our computer systems, internet, power systems, are far more complex. And by the way, you used to work for an internet mogul, a very involved IT guy who's kind of prominent in news. And by the way, I've got your ex-boss here, Mr. Mike Blimmersberger.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I mean, he hasn't been performing too well in the debates, and
well, he's all about control. So I think he wanted to monitor us today. He was afraid we might get out of kilter here.
Right. You know, he's well known to trying to curtail our civil liberties, especially when it comes to gun rights.
That's what I don't like about him. So let's cover him up. I don't want him to see this. I don't want him right here. Oh, that's the real him. Excuse me. I don't want him looking. So let's just cover him.
But he just doesn't have the charisma to really galvanize his campaign. He's kind of, yeah.
But he's fighting against our freedoms, and I've got a problem with that. I'm glad to know you have a problem with that, and I've detected that in things you said before. You're really about our freedoms. You've got
definitely.
You've got a lot of detractors, and actually, I've used this as a prop to kind of make a point here. You have a lot of people that think you're on the other side.
I have people that think I'm the Illuminati. I have people think that I'm the devil. I have people that think I'm a Freemason. I have people think that I'm part of the Skull and Bone Society. That I'm a CIA. I mean, everything that you can think of. Well, the thing is that I'm just a nice Jewish guy in New York that's just trying to save his country, and I was in the middle of trying to get into medical school. Because of my brother's death. It's a real simple story, and people construed all these like secrets, secret hand signs and.
We live in a hypersensitive society because people know we're being run over by something, and so they're looking for signs, and they often overinterpret things. So what they need to look at is, what's your message? What's in your heart? Where are you going? Mm-hmm. And where you're going, you're talking about freedom. You're talking about disclosure. You talk about transparency of information. People on that side never want to talk about those things. They don't want transparency. They want to keep everything to themselves, keep the playing cards close to their chest. They don't want to be seen what it is that they're playing, the hands that they're holding. And you're calling for the opposite. And I think that, and the fact that you call for freedom, that you're trying to save this country. I mean, my God, that's the last thing they want to do. The fact that you care about these things, I think it speaks to where your heart's coming from. And I think that's where people need to look. They need to look at what's the message coming from the individual. Where is their heart? I actually have a friend who's an ex-CIA guy who was very involved in the CIA. He had a career in it. Yet he's out there attacking the swamp. He's out there attacking the deep state. He's out there making all the right moves and spending a lot of his time and money doing it. So I know his heart's in the right place. Even in all these agencies, the top may be rotten to the core, or at least it may have a cadre of people that run pretty much the top. Every now and then, a good individual might accidentally pop to the top, but they're going to get rid of him and defame him at some point pretty quickly. And I know
or they have an epiphany, while they're at the top, to switch sides.
Turn around. So I know of a case that of a CIA director who actually turned, and they really trashed him after that. But the fact that they trashed him is an indicator, and the fact that some of the things he's doing now and what he's fighting for now, it gives me some hope that even as Luke Skywalker saw a benefit in turning Darth Vader.
Right.
So there is some cases of hope. There's some examples. The organization, the very top, can be questioned, But the rank and file, there's good rank and file in all these agencies. There's good people that care about doing the right thing. Now, they may have a lot of mush in their heads about the mission they were assigned to do. There's a lot of parochialism, but that doesn't mean that you don't have good rank and file in some of these systems. Overall, a lot of these agencies, in my opinion, should just be eliminated. They shouldn't even exist. A lot of these three-letter regulatory agencies. I did a video about how government is run, where I talk about how regulatory agencies are in bed with the regulatees. And the worst case of it's in the power community, where you have the North American Reliability Corporation, which is an industry group that's actually got themselves set up to have to get to write the regulations that should be coming out of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. So you got NERC and FERC, and they're in bed with each other so much so that we can't get anything done to protect our power grid in this country. So that's one of the things that some of us are fighting against. So, and I do rail against that. I do attack that every opportunity I get. And I've chaired 2 power grid defense conferences, and the people that are involved with that know and understand that situation, and we're out trying to work it. But it's we're David fighting against an army of Goliaths. But I still think we'll win if this whole house don't come collapsing down on us before then.
I have a lot of hope for America if we band together.
Right.
If we're divided, I am afraid we'll lose our country, because we're falling into their plan. And I've been stating from day one that I am concerned about this BioPatriot Act, that what I call the BioPatriot Act, that they're going to use this as a means to curtail your biological freedoms. And some of it is already codified in HHS and the CDC. So, but we're going to see more bureaucracy. And I want to see a day where it's a pre-9/11 day, where we don't have the surveillance state. I want to go back to a pre-Patriot Act day.
Amen.
And and people just need to wake up that this scope creep that we have on surveillance. And it was very
call for that means you're not in any way related to the powers that be, the money funders, no. Deep state.
No. I'm putting my life and my future career at risk here. But the caller that what I call the Texan, he reached out to his local health community to try to inform them that this particular protocol of only 14-day containment isn't going to work. You need at least 24 days, and some people are saying 42-day containment.
Wow.
So
I heard there was a case of somebody was 36 days after he
but it could be maybe noise in the data there, who knows what's going on. But just to be safe, a 2-month containment sounds pretty logical. But he was harassed by the police.
Well, in the safety world that I work in, we believe in design margin. You add margin to things.
Right.
We have what we call margin of safety.
Right.
You add some padding on it.
Right. And there is zero
redundancy. We believe in disqualifying sensors. And we see none of that in this. And our lives, the lives of our country, the lives of our citizenry, the resiliency and survival of our society is dependent on that. We do these things for the survival of a rocket. So why, when we've got something far more dear to us, our entire world, our entire society, aren't we using principles like this? That would be the professional, smart thing to do, but it's not being done. And I call that irresponsibility. I call that gross negligence, malfeasance.
Here's the problem, is that because of our engineering background, we would be able to run the CDC better in this crisis than Nancy Messner or Mesner or something like that. So, she doesn't have that skill set. She doesn't realize the importance of redundancy. So, and margin of safety and all this.
There's no talking about sensor qualification, sensor disqualification. You're only testing something once, and you only test it occasionally, and you got a lot of rules as to whether or not you test it or not, and when you test it, and then they,
right.
By any engineer, as an engineer who works this kind of stuff in an area of safety, I'm going to say that's bogus rules. Now, I'm not going to say I speak for anybody other than myself, because you can get in trouble speaking for agencies and other companies. I speak for Greg Allison as a safety professional right now. And I'm going to tell you those are bogus rules. These are not the ways that you operate a small system. These are not the ways you fly a little rocket. And if that's the case for a rocket in a smaller system, why do you justify breaking all of these rules, carte blanche entirely, for an entire society, for a culture, for a country that can be very much at risk for what's to come? I'm hoping that this COVID-19 blows over. I'm hoping it'll genetically just fizzle out. I think that's a wild dream, but I'm actually leading prayer groups and praying and meditating to try to bring ourselves into a new reality here. That may be
science, prayer, luck, working together. These are all important. But my prediction is that we already have people infected that are asymptomatic spreading. And we're going to see big numbers that pop up after the kits are available to the local municipalities. And we're going to start seeing breakdowns in society at all different levels. And I think once we start seeing the breakouts at these seed centers, 8 weeks after that, we're going to see a complete collapse of the medical system, and that we're going to snap into that 12th century medicine.
Well,
that's what I think, that we're going to have a nonlinear event after 8 weeks once the outbreaks start. Now, I think the outbreaks will start in the data.
When does the outbreak start, in your opinion?
In the data, I think they'll start showing in a week and a half once the kits are available and they start actually testing the COVID-19. See, we don't know what the numbers really are until they start testing. And a week and a half, and then the countdown is 8 weeks after that.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking: that they would not start invoking martial law or quarantine here until all the ICU beds fill up. But once the ICU beds fill up, once the hospitals overcome, they're going to get in a panic mode in the EMA, Emergency Management Association.
Right. So the primary system will overflow into the secondary system.
So at what point does that trigger them saying, "Oh my God, we've got to go into quarantines here"? Or where are we going to see that kind of?
Well, you're already starting to see it in Alabama. That they're talking about that FEMA center.
Yeah, but that's not a statewide quarantine, and that's
no, right. I don't know if you will ever have quote statewide. I mean, when you say statewide, I mean they're not going to lock down the whole state. I mean, you're going to have like pockets of quarantine within the state. Let's say Texas, it's a large state. The whole state isn't going to be in lockdown, but you're going to have big bubbles within the state that are locked down. Dallas will be locked down. Houston will be locked down. San Antonio, will be locked down. That something like that. But
when? What's the trigger point? Is it the ICU?
Well, it's when you start seeing the ERs collapsing, and that's my point. Is we're going to start seeing that in 8 weeks.
All right, so
we're going to see. Well, I think the primary stop point or the primary containment will fail in 8 weeks. Okay. After those kits are available for testing.
Right. Okay, a lot of people say, "Well, okay, we're being alarmist here," but I look at it like this. I look at it like this: if you look at China and compare where we're at now compared to them, I think because the way this is, in my opinion, been mishandled by not looking at proper testing, by not considering the true nature of something's incubation period, by neglecting a lot of these factors, by allowing people to travel, by lax self-quarantine measures, that this stuff is spreading right now across this country, primarily in certain urban areas and pockets, but it's out there and it's spreading and it's moving around. I think it's here now, spreading. So I would say if this thing started in China in a case or two in the month of December, we're probably late December, early January along the scale of China. And by mid-January, it was exploding in China. So, it's only February now. It didn't take 2 months. China's been in lockdown since their Lunar New Year. So China's been in lockdown for over a month. So if you put us on the scale compared to how it started spreading in China, and where we're at today, uh, you seem to be pretty dead on with your numbers there. You may even
Mhm.
be optimistic because uh, I think we've got a lot more of it here than we realize, and that's what happened in China too. It
Well,
was
in the United States, there's a lot of empty space between, especially in the Midwest. There's a lot of farmland, and there's our cities aren't as populated as in China. So I mean, New York is only 8.6 million people, but Shanghai is way higher than that. you know, Wuhan is way more than that. So the population densities are different in the United States, and also we have
but we have a lot of mass.
we have different phenotypes and genotypes in our population. So the spread of the disease characteristics are probably going to be a lot different. I suspect that because of this ACE2 receptor situation with Asian males, it's going to spread higher in Asian countries than, let's say, in more Caucasian countries. That's why I keep on saying that most likely in the United States, about 5-6 of the individuals will have mild but need to be treated cases. 1/6 of them that actually test positive for COVID could die. They're severe and they have to be taken care of. Now, the concern I have is there's a lot of Americans that have prior conditions, and there is a lot of evidence, and Peak Prosperity goes in very good detail, that people that are obese, people that have heart disease, yeah, very good channel, people that have diabetes, have pulmonary, issues, are smokers and stuff like that, they are all going to have complications with this. And we have a lot of sick people and a lower immune system in this country because of the foods that we eat and the dietary practices that we have.
Part of our agricultural practice.
It's a big problem.
Our agricultural system does not fertilize with micronutrients. They use just the gross, largest scale macronutrients that make plants grow, just enough to get something sold and off the farm. They fertilize with nitrogen, potassium, and potash, basically. So it's NPK, potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen. Excuse me. So the entire fertilizer system is NPK. It's they're not using all the micronutrients.
And a lot of people, and you know this, but a lot of people probably don't, is that there is an ecosystem with bacteria that work together to be able to process ammonium and all the and create a rich environment in the soil to
now you're
grow
talking
food.
my language.
So people don't realize that you can't just pump chemicals into the soil. You have to have the right microbiota in the soil.
Bingo.
To have a healthy, quote, farm.
In case people haven't noticed, there's no big bird flying over a forest spraying stuff to make the forest grow. It grows because it has all the key essential bacteria and fungal organisms in the soil itself. Good soil is living soil. In any book on organic gardening, it does not tell you that in the first sentence. You should throw it away.
Not only that, over-tilling the field, the birds will eat the worms, and the soil won't be as rich in year 2 or 3. And eventually you won't have any worms, and you don't have that micronutrient cycle.
So you need to contact Greg Allison. Go to his website, greengregs.com, and buy worms.
yeah. But I'll tell you, I think there's a big business in just, selling worms to farmers to repopulate their soil because of the over-tilling.
There is a shortage of worms, so it's a good
that and bees. That and bees. Shortage of bees and worms.
Right. Also, just I teach how to make worm tea, the microbiotic benefits of worm tea, worm castings. These are nutrients. That's all I use in my garden. I do organic gardening. I should say natural grown gardening. I use no chemicals in my process. You might use a little rock dust to add some minerals, or tree product, because tree leaves, tree chips, wood chips, trees pull from deep in the ground. They pull the nutrients up that that are the nutrients that we've lost in the soil that we repeatedly harvest on and only fertilize with NPK. So if you really want good nutritious food, don't go to the big distributors, including the big gigantic organic food stores, like Whole Foods, because they're selling you the big factory grown stuff. Go to the individual homesteader, organic, natural grown type gardeners. And organic is just a label that's very misleading. You need to go to people that you know what they're doing and how they grow it. Ask them what's their processes. You can talk to these people. Go to the farmers markets. Grow your own. Now, I do a lot of videos telling people how to grow their own,
Well,
indoors or outdoors.
Here's the problem is that some of these cities are banning people growing their own food in their backyard in suburbs.
But you can grow in containers. You can grow. I've heard of grew in his closet. You can grow. I grow food, microgreens in my living room. I've got videos on that, how to do it. And a couple, 3 trays, you can grow all you can eat. And microgreens are 40 times.
Right, what I'm going to do an experiment because we're moving to a new place in a couple months, and I'm going to take a picture of the window. Okay, it's a big window in the living room area, going from the ceiling to the floor, and I'm going to take a picture, give you some dimensions, and you tell me how I can grow a farm out of that window. All right, we'll try it. We'll just see. I'll do an experiment, see what I can grow in New York. But people do need to realize that localization, to get to your point, localization is better than this globalization or dependency on a larger corporation. Self-reliance, localization is where it's at. And there's even laws there. Yeah. And there's kind of laws like you can't even go to like a local farmer and buy their milk. You have to buy it at the store, and it's like, come on. I mean, we've been buying milk and stuff and eggs and stuff from the local farmers for years, why? So what it is it's this concerted effort to like kill off that local farmer community and force everyone to go to the big box stores.
It's all about control. It's all about market share for the big corporations. And they sell it under the guise of food safety. But what you get is food that come from food lots where cattle are udders deep in cow waste, and where they got to just pump them full of hormones and antibiotics because they're all standing hip to shoulder and, like I said, udder deep in their own excrement. It's nasty, filthy. I mean, you can smell those places from miles away, and that's what you get. The food that's grown in the factories, the stuff that they're growing in their systems are nothing but NPK fertilized, even if they label it organic. Yeah, and there's a lot of allowance of what they'll let pass under organic, by the way. So it's a guys. You really are far better off buying from the local grower. You're far better off to resist City Hall and your state and federal governments when they try to pass these things, because the big corporations get together and put together these laws. They go in Washington, D.C. to all the lawyers on K Street. And if you've ever been to K Street in Washington, D.C. area, and I've been there quite a few times, by the way, back when I was active in the National Space Society.
I've never been on K Street. I've been in Washington, D.C.
That's
but I've never been actually walking down K Street.
Yeah, it's a huge street of that's all law firms basically, and it's where a lot of your lobbyists are based out of. It's where a lot of stuff's going on in Washington D.C. That's the real engine running the place. Everything else is sitting on top of it.
So like every time I've gone to Washington D.C., it was through the bus station, and you end up in Union Station, and then from there you just walk. You walk to Congress or whatever.
Across, sure. Been there. I've run the halls of Congress quite a few times. So that's how it's really run is nasty, but it's really all about the guys that's got the money. He has the goal, makes the rule. It's the big corporations. If you take the golden rule, who has the money makes the rule. Birds of a feather flocks together, and Lord Acton's power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You put these 3 things together and you realize that 3 points determine a plane. That's how you get the stool of a leg, right? And you know that as an engineer.
Right.
So You put those 3 points together and you wind up exactly where we're at. It's not a mystery, my friend. I mean, anytime without checks and balances, this is where you go. And even when you got checks and balances, eventually the people behind these 3 points are going to figure out how to subvert them to the point that they get away with what they want anyway. And that's precisely where we are today.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And you know, it's hard to resist though. I mean, like that one caller, like I said, you know, he was being harassed by the police. I mean, it was very clear when you listen to the audio record. It's amazing that he recorded all these conversations with the hospital and the,
Wow.
you know, the health department administrators and the police officer.
Wow.
And you can just see the tyranny that a lot of other people are going to start seeing, because the way it's situated is the citizens are always at fault.
Right.
And the way it's supposed to be is they are working for us.
That's supposed to be that way.
They serve the citizens. We don't serve them. And they flipped it. They flipped it. Yeah.
Well, the Patriot Act was a big overthrow of our country and who we're supposed to be. And
that's why I have this. You know, as I've been doing this for, you know, a few weeks now, I've kind of tried to create a story line, like an analogy to try explain this overall arching thing that we're talking about, because it's not just one thing. So it took 102 minutes for the Twin Towers to fall when they were hit. Okay. And it's like a bookend. Okay. And you have a time, which is codified in these books from that bookend. And then the other bookend is the mirror image of 102. 102 mirror image is 201. And that's event 201. So this is the other bookend of a larger thing that is happening, the erosion of our civil liberties. And that's why it's so important to stop it now. Because I'll tell you, with that 5G and that never-ending surveillance state and the erosion of our biological civil liberties and forced vaccinations, this is the end. This bookend thing that I'm talking about. If we don't act as citizens, we are going to lose our civil liberties.
I agree with that. Now, but let's define a couple things. Let's be precise in our things we're concerned about. The thing I'm most concerned about in 5G is it permits more control and more resolution with our sensor sets and the deep state side of the equation. I'm not worried about the radiation so much itself, in that its power level is actually lower, so much so that it be blocked by houses and trees. So they have to have more of that stuff out there, but that also gives them more resolution and pinpointing things. So I'm not so concerned about the radiative effects of some people, or some people think the radiation is going to be the doomsday. Actually, I'm worried more about Wi-Fi we have in our houses and the cell phone towers that we've traditionally had in terms of the radiation effects. The 5G I'm not as concerned about because the power levels are lower.
The reason why I say 5G that I'm worried about the surveillance grid that they're building.
That is what I'm talking about right there. Yeah. It's that aspect.
It's the real-time surveillance grid.
Now, the other thing that I was wanting to mention to you and talk to you about, one of the topics I wanted to touch on, you do have a background in AI.
And I did some postdoctoral work in AI, right?
A lot of people are scared of AI. They're worried about the systems becoming sentient. Now, as an electrical engineer who has taken a number of courses in computer system design, I learned, how to design a computer. I know what's at the very core, the heart of a computer. And the very heart of a computer, I will say neural networks aside, that's a potential exception, which is still in its infancy. But the very heart of a computer is something we call an arithmetic logic unit. It is what makes it is the actual computer. The arithmetic logic unit is a simple little device that's only capable of doing one task. It's basically correlating high and low voltages. We refer to it as adding ones and zeros. Now, when you negate it, as you add it, you are essentially subtracting. It's just a little rule for how you do the addition, and you create the effect of subtraction. To us, we use the mathematical analogy of it as addition and subtraction of ones and zeros, but essentially it's just simply correlating one's high and low voltages using logic gates. And multiplication is doing it many times. Division is doing the subtraction of it many times. But through this, and through the speed of the machine, we're able to write very sophisticated algorithms that gives you effects and outputs that look extremely sophisticated. Our entire video is being streamed in ones and zeros and recorded in ones and zeros, and everything we do on computers comes out of these algorithms, including the things that we call AI today, Alexis and such and so forth. But nowhere in the system, no matter how good and smart it looks, is there true sentience. It may seem like it, it may have the appearances of it, and one of these days it may tell you it is sentient, but I would submit that's the algorithm. At least I would say there's no soul in the beast.
Yeah, I wrote a book on artificial intelligence. I actually got very depressed when I was writing it because it led to the transhumanism, posthumanism, concepts. But go ahead.
There is something I worry about. It's not the lack or presence of a soul in the beast. It's not sentience of the system itself. It's the man behind the curtain. It's who's pulling the strings. It's the programmers, the controllers of the systems. They're the ones who are going to have that absolute power that absolutely corrupts. Whether they go in it good at first or not, they might be the best, most beautiful people in the world, but power corrupts and absolute power.
Well, you need to know what the prime directive is, in the algorithm. If you don't know the prime directive, then you got a problem. But here, just to unpack it for people that really haven't dived into artificial intelligence and actually wrote the code, wrote code. So people need to realize there are functions, and you can have, if statements, and you can have very complicated programs that are self-learning. It's self-learning or assisted learning.
Right.
These things are really what is termed machine learning.
Right.
Okay. They are not sentient. They don't have a soul or anything like that. And they are what they call narrow AI. Okay. They can do only one thing or maybe a couple things. That's it. But they can take new data, reconfigure the parameters within the function, and then spit out, a new algorithm, that's updated, a new function that's updated. That if a data point goes above the predicted value or below the predicted value, the program will do something. All right, that's machine learning. When you start going into artificial neural networks, or what they call deep learning, then you're starting to go into something that is really artificial intelligence, but it's still very rudimentary and it's still narrow. And there is much more data that it's looking at, and it's looking at correlations between other data sets and creating its own regression and adapting. So the adaptability of it is higher. I'm concerned that in the near future that we'll reach, through artificial intelligence, something what they call artificial general intelligence. And when you have artificial general intelligence, you have at least the computational ability of the human brain. That doesn't mean that you have the soul. Now here's the two lines of thought. All right.
You definitely reached that.
Right. But here's the two lines of thought. If there is a soul that is, from a divinely source, then no matter what we create, that soul will not be in a artificial general intelligent machine. And we have a data point, or we have an analogy to look at. The story of the Golem, where right. So, there was the story, for ones that don't know, in Prague, there were a bunch of rabbis that said special prayers. They manipulated letters, and they were able to make a human being out of clay by saying something, right? And then, but what happened was and it was supposed to protect this city, the Jews in the city, from pogroms. So here's
I am Mike.
Right. So here, but the problem is it didn't have a soul, and it created a lot of havoc. And this is where the story of Frankenstein comes from, is actually the Prague story of the Golem. So they ended up destroying the Golem. And it basically is a Kabbalistic warning not to think that you can create a being. And my concern is the artificial intelligence, coming from that perspective, that artificial general intelligence is like creating a golem, and that we're going to have problems. And we've been told this, from the 12th century or the 13th century, not to do this. Now, the other side is the more science. The other side is the more
Revelations in the Bible says that the so-called Antichrist will create a being, a statue, and make it speak, and then the statue would be given authority to force people to worship the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
So,
we create something that we don't really understand.
Think of that as
an emergent
a
property.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the other side of the spectrum is what I'll call the pure scientists. Okay. And the pure scientists that don't have any kind of perspective on divinity. They will say, well, if you have enough neural connections, you will eventually have the emergent property of a soul or consciousness. So it's the battle of divinity versus emergence. But they have, on the side of the scientists, it's sort of true. If you look at simple organisms, something that has only one neuron or two or three neurons doesn't have the computational power than, let's say, a worm that has more neurons. And if you look at a mouse, it has a lot more neurons. You look at a dog, it has a lot more neurons. And then you look at a human, so you can see that if you plot this out, that there does seem to be more of a soul or more sentient as you move up the ladder of neural connections. So this leads to the idea, well, just give us more neural connections, even if they're artificial, so we'll be even more sentient. All right. So this leads to the transhuman and post-humanist movement. And I, coming from more of the divinity side, believe that is, defiling the body, and that it's a dangerous path. So I kind of stopped once I, wrote the book, and stopped, doing the postdoctoral stuff in artificial intelligence and focused more on my path, to medicine. That's the humanist. The biggest humanist thing that you could do is work with nature and work with the body. Learn how the body works and work with nature. Instead of trying to develop these artificial systems. I felt like I felt dirty. I felt depressed. I didn't feel human. I felt inhuman. While the other path, the current path that I'm on, I feel very human. So, it's a deep topic. There's a philosophy to it. There's the technical prowess of how to code that, those types of algorithms, the inner workings of it. Most of what we call AI right now is really just machine learning.
I have friends, and I have a number of friends that are in the transhumanist movement. And I remember having a debate with one of them. This was like over 20 years ago. And he really believed he could just upload his soul into a computer. And I'm telling you, at best you're creating a rough, bad facsimile of yourself. That's not you. So you'd commit suicide to upload yourself to a computer. That's just suicide. It's nothing else. Right. That's not you in the computer. That is some kind of algorithmic poor facsimile of you. It's not you.
I think what they are is building a golem, and they'll realize that it's not what they thought it was. And we've been warned not to play around with golems.
Well, there's people that are doing that too today. And I think that's also in that spirit cooking community that's out there. My understanding is one of the things that they do. is they're trying to build golems, and they're using a lot of
well, you know, it's the spirit cooking types that in the Kabbalistic tradition, you, by doing good, you create an angel. By doing bad, you create a demon. Okay. And, you know, and through action and prayer can create these beings, if you want to call them, they're spiritual beings. And through your actions, this is what you're judged when you die. You know, how much good did you do in the world versus how much bad did you do in the world? So they're tapping into something that you know goes all the way back to, you know, some ancient, you know, beliefs where through prayer you can create goodness or evil, and it's depending on the type of person, you know, what's your motives and what kind of world we create. So I do believe in the power of prayer, but here's the catch here. You got, you know, it needs to be the power of prayer for good, because the power of prayer, there is a power for prayer for evil.
Yeah, I got to wonder about what John Podesta's into. You know, he's
I mean, well, you know, I'll tell you, these people. I mean, I'm shocked that they're not jailed for all the evidence, you know, of, you know, the pedophilia and you know, the crazy, you know, satanic stuff. But here's the problem.
Well, he ran something called the food chain. What was that called? It was the food. I can't remember the exact name. He ran an exercise. It was like Event 201 for George Soros.
Really? I didn't know that.
5 years ago. And they targeted the year 2020 in this exercise. And one of they were looking at a food chain reaction game is what they called the exercise. And it was based on the idea that the food chain would collapse in the year 2020. And through various and sundry causes, one of the principal potential causes for it was a viral outbreak. Very much like Event 201, and
well,
it came with pretty much the same conclusions.
This dovetails into what I was saying is that I get this sense from, you know, just a harmonic sense in my soul that what happened at 9/11 in Event 201, they are part of this codified thing of history, and it's a bookend. They're capping it. It's like a capstone. And that's why I'm trying to prevent it. Because if they capstone it or bookend it, we've lost our opportunity to prevent it. It's harder to prevent. That's what my soul is saying, that you have to act and stop the bookend or the capstoning of this 20-year progression since 9/11. I didn't know about the George Soros, you know, game thing about food shortage, but it's all.
Lost you there.
I'm sorry.
Food chain reaction game, and John Podesta led the study. Go figure. What a nice guy. And he did it.
And he likes pizza too.
You know, you can't talk about that on YouTube, right? You can't. Like, not allowed to. So don't go there.
You know. But you know.
Anyway, I think the astute observer will understand.
Right.
There's just so much. It's just so sickening right now.
Well, you know, we have to cleanse the soul of America, you know, and we're a nation of doers. We're a nation of pioneers. I am still positive and optimistic of our nation, but there is a lot of pessimism in our citizenry, in our population. That's that's friction, preventing us to reaching a certain momentum.
Once you attack somebody so much and you hit them so much, I mean, like if you kick a dog, 20 times, eventually when you walk in the room, the dog's gonna run in the corner and cower. Right. The old analogy about a beaten dog, and that's how our citizenry are to a large degree. And so they're very astute to looking for symbols, and they don't often know what or why it is. Some of them do, but a lot don't. And so they're starting to react. That's one of the reasons I think we had the election results we had in this last time around, is that people were tired of the same game. That's the reason why the people in Britain are pulling out of the EU, is they realize what they're getting sucked into and they don't want any part of it. By the way, a lot of the countries didn't want to get in the EU to start with. They voted against it, but they kept getting the proposition put in front of them again and again and again. And the people putting it forward kept twisting the knobs to try to get the outcome they were seeking in the electoral process, till eventually they got that country stuck in the EU. Britain finally found a way out. And one of the guys that we've talked about who wants to create a plan like that is your buddy, Mike Bloomberg, who is trying to get the entire American Western Hemisphere into such a thing as I've heard people like yourself mention.
Right. I mean, he's trying to do that our hemisphere economic union between North America and South America and Central America.
Well,
but I don't think it's gonna. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, if anything, there's a higher probability of seeing the EU collapse within the next 20 years. So maybe even quicker. Maybe even quicker.
We have hope.
Well, we do have hope, but here's the problem: is that our president, he's like a once in 100-year, situation. We have George Washington, and we had Lincoln, then we had maybe Teddy Roosevelt, with the trust busting. Then, who's the next one? Maybe Reagan, and then Trump. So my point here is that we're not going to get another president in our lifetime that's going to be the localization that we're looking for. They're going to be part of the globalists. That's why the power of the citizenry, the answer is not put another president in that is a localist. The answer is that the citizenry needs to take back their country, because the globalists are going to keep on trying to put in a stooge, in the presidency to promote this globalization like they have for the last 30 years.
They have an agenda, and they have a deadline for the agenda. They have a number on it. Mm-hmm. It's an official.
That's the thing that I don't. I mean, again, I was just a Jewish guy in New York trying to get to medical school before all this. All right, I don't really understand from a scientific point of view why they are pushing it so hard. Now, I've been talking to DuByne from Oppenheimer Ranch, and he's a geologist, and he knows a lot about what has happened in the geological record. Yes. And there is this concern of a major cosmic event that snaps us back, in caves, and we have a reset of civilization. Now, I see where he's going with it. And I see, when he shows me these rocks, I see the pattern that he's saying. I get it, where this energy source, this energy wave coming from the galactic center, waves out every 12,000 years or so. And there are other patterns that are like fractal that have different magnitudes, and it's fluxing the sun.
If you go,
so I get that. I get that. But here's the problem. It doesn't coincide with what we've been told in the Jewish faith, that we're working with a different calendar. We're working with a calendar that is about 5,700 and something years, 80 years. Okay. We're told that the rebuilding of the temple is in year 6,000, and that there's 1,000 years of the temple after that. So DuByne's calculation of when this event takes place doesn't coincide with the ability to rebuild the temple in 257 years from now or so, roughly, and the 1,000 year reign of the temple. I could understand the cosmic event happening after that 1,000 years. But DuByne's thinking that this thing's going to happen within the next 20 years, maybe even sooner.
It's hard to say, but I understand that 1,000 years is a day, and the Jewish faith has a week, and with the seventh day being a holy day. And so that seventh day would be your seventh millennium, right? But if you're almost done with your sixth millennium.
Right.
So you're almost at the point to enter the Sabbath millennium, which
Right.
would coincide with the Christianity millennial reign also. It's
Right.
pretty close. So
Right.
it's interesting how those times link up within the face of
And then creation ends, quote,
right.
quote, creation ends after the 7,000th year.
But
Then I can see that this cosmic event happening, and then the big recycle starts again. But so I don't understand. So the point I'm making is from the Judaic folklore point of view, I don't understand why they're trying to push it.
okay, I got it. So you're saying that the people that push this do seem to follow the Kabbalism. They do seem to be synced in to some of that folklore. They're just following a different path of it. So why are they doing it when they're doing it? And maybe they have extra knowledge that's outside of that. Diamond is
or is it the knowledge that they're using? The ones that are doing the Kabbalist type stuff. It's because it's sinister. It's blurred. And when you look, the light is refracted, so it's not giving the true position of time.
And maybe they're trying to overthrow.
So like if you look at something that the diffraction of an item in water, it'll be either farther away or closer depending on the refractive index. They're refractive because they're coming from the evil side. It's the pool of water of knowledge has distorted the time prediction.
It could be, but also think of this too. In the Christian scenario, from the standpoint of Revelations, Armageddon, and these things, the look there is that there would be a period before that 1,000 years, a period of evil that's talked about as the period of tribulation. You got tribulation, the Great Tribulation, and things like that from the Christian standpoint. And then you would have this millennium rule.
But I could make an argument saying that we're already living that 1,000 years of tribulation. We're in it.
Yeah, you could say that. Yes. So there's a lot that's hard to interpret in the way that the texts are written. A lot of people interpret it many ways. And so what Diamond looks at is the actual geological record. If you go to the Vostok ice course in Antarctica, you get exactly what the climate has done over the past several 100,000 years. And you can see there is a cycle of 12,000 years, but there's also a bigger cycle event on the order of about 100,000 years. And off the top of my head, I don't remember if the cycles are elongating or compressing. It's one or the other. I believe it's elongating. It's not a exact 100,000 year cycle. It's a cycle that's growing a little bit with time. So whatever is driving this event is not a precision clock based on the sun going around the Earth. I mean, excuse me, boy, all the flat earthers are going to be all over me now. No, I did not mean that. I meant to say the Earth going around the sun. Absolutely. I'm not a flat earther by any stretch of imagination. So,
but to worms is the Earth flat.
The worms, that doesn't matter. It's just the worm bed. That is the Earth.
Right.
And the space traveler is the one who gets out of the bed. Worms have their space travelers.
Right, exactly.
By the way, they do generate wormholes.
Right.
I do sell wormhole generators, my friend. So I'll get off topic here. So this cycle tends to elongate a little bit as you go forward in time. So it may be that what's to come. See, there is, for example, this guy named Doug Vogt who thinks an event's going to hit us in about 2046. And what they're looking at is this idea of a solar micronova. And some people like Ben Davidson would say this would be an event generated by a galactic magnetic field from the galactic center. I don't know. I'm still, analyzing these things, looking at them. I do know this. Doug Vogt, I don't buy everything he tells. He's trying to figure out how certain things happen. He's trying to figure out how you get 2-mile thick ice sheet, Laurentide ice sheet of North America in a colder period, how you get the evaporation. And so he's come up with this notion that this solar event evaporated 600 feet of ocean water. I would tell you if that happened, there would be no bacteria or cockroaches on this planet anywhere under any circumstance. If you got that much heat being put on one side of the world, all the air would absolutely be sucked off the other side of the world. You would have a huge vortex. There would be, the other side would be not only airless and flash frozen, there would be no complex organisms anywhere on the planet. It would maybe some bacteria 2 miles under the surface.
Not only that, what doesn't make sense is the KT boundary. And I didn't have an opportunity to talk to DuByne about this, and because he's much more knowledgeable. But with the KT boundary, if this event took place, why was the dinosaurs able to last for so many millions of years? You would think they would have been able to, they would have died off with these big events. I could see them living, millions of years, but not, certain species of dinosaur, live for 150 million years or more. So something doesn't make sense with the catastrophe theory.
Well, the KT boundary pretty much did the dinosaurs in.
Right. No, I get that part. I get that part. I get that part. I get the KT boundary, and there's no dinosaurs after that.
The birds are dinosaurs in a sense, a subspecies of the dinosaurs. They survive.
No, but the Jurassic period.
Oh yeah.
You had a lot of these 1,000-year or 120,000-year cycles within the Jurassic period. So why? The point I'm making is, how did the dinosaurs around the world survive this catastrophic plasmic event or gamma ray burst event or whatever it is, and get up to the KT boundary? And then, through an asteroid, I can see, mass extinction. But the mass extinction should have been more periodic within the Jurassic.
I think there's a lot of different things going on. Here's what happens. People have a ha-ha moment, an epiphany, and then they interpret everything they know from there forward and see according to the worldview that's formed by that epiphany moment they have. And so you got a lot of people running around with different theories based on that. And I think you got to step back and realize there's a lot of different things that go on in our world, and there's many different systems that interplay with each other. There may be solar events triggered on a periodic scale, but there also may be other periodic events, and that our sun bobs up and down through the plane of the ecliptic of the galaxy, and as it goes around, and it also goes around a galaxy once every 250,000 years, which seems to be roughly correspond with the biggest extinction level events. And that may coincide with there being, there's a Sagittarius infrared galaxy that's colliding with our galaxy that has a spiral arm that jets down into the planet. It could be that just get more disruptions in the Oort cloud at certain periods as the sun moves through these various regimes as it goes around the galaxy. So you could have a cascading event of more collisions, more flux density of asteroids, Kuiper belt, and Oort belt, or Oort cloud objects into the inner solar system that have absolutely nothing to do with the sun going poof and pop. But you could have the sun going poof and pop. And what would be the effects of that? I'm not saying that these guys aren't onto something, but I don't believe that you're evaporating 600 feet of ocean water. I don't believe the Earth would survive it. I do know that when I drive by a pond or a lake in the coldest days that I see around here, there's massive evaporation off that lake because there's latent heat in there. You get a difference between the surface over the water over and what's underneath. The biggest evaporation I ever see off a pond is on cold days. So I would expect the same from the ocean. So I would expect a lot of oceanic atmospheric evaporation when you have a cold period. And so this whole notion that you wouldn't get any snow and you couldn't build up a 2-mile thick ice sheet during the ice age, I don't buy that part either. So I don't think I don't believe you could have the event that evaporates 600 feet of seawater. And I don't believe you need that event, which Doug Vogt thinks you need to get to a Laurentide ice sheet. Could there be solar macronova? Yeah, there could be. There are certainly super flares. We know that. And the super flares may be enough to totally wipe out civilizations, which could be an event much shy of the micronova concept. But maybe you do have micronovas. I honestly don't know. I'm still researching and trying to look into that, and I don't know if we definitively get there in terms of data we've got. There is data for periodic events, but making it absolutely so up the case closed is not as easy as some think. For one, this Chan Thomas book that a lot of our friends talks about a wave that's 10,000 foot high coming, so they say the Earth just stops rotating and the oceans come out of their basin. You get a wave 10,000 feet high that sweeps across the continent and wipes out everything on the continent.
Yeah, but the thing is the amount of momentum that you need, negative force to stop the Earth from rotating is like, huh? It's just like, it's not possible.
It's just huge.
Yeah. It's just,
and then to restart it was
huge. Right.
Now,
it's just,
I will give them this. The most powerful force in the universe is the Coulomb force. It's electrical. The sun does send out electrical signals. What I have a problem with Ben Davidson is he says that the Earth's poles physically flip. He thinks there's a crustal displacement of 90 degrees. But because he knows our ice sheets don't entirely melt, a lot of our ice sheets are old, he says the Earth snaps right back in place. Well, that's kind of hard to swallow. That would go right back to the exact same spot. And it's not just the momentum, it's the fact that there's the moon out here that anchors all this with the tidal forces that would want to stop it from doing it. It's the fact that the equatorial bulge of the Earth is something like 26,000 feet. So it's like climbing over something bigger than the Himalaya mountain range to move all this stuff. And it's, if you think of the continents as little chunks of rock going over and back and forth continental place, they would be splitting and cracking into shreds. So this whole notion is hard to swallow. Now, I'll give them something. I'll say, let's say that you have an electrical motor, EM motor affecting Earth that causes the Earth to jerk. I won't say it couldn't happen. The evidence of the events of the scale they're talking about is hard to find. There are places where boulders are displaced. There are places where signs of high flood. But if you had a comet hit a Laurentide ice sheet, splashing water from the ice sheet that was 2 miles thick, you're going to have water events at the 10,000 foot level. You're going to have boulders displaced in odd and strange ways.
Right.
But even all that aside, if you take their effects and say we get a jerk of the Earth, maybe we do, maybe we can, and maybe there is a giant wave that comes over the mountain ranges. There are certainly signs of salty water deposits in the high deserts in the West. And it could be because lakes have formulated there during the Ice Age and they melted out later and evaporated and left salt behind. I don't know if that's sufficient to get the salt depths there or not. I'm not personally a geologist. Diamond is a geologist. I've got a lot of friends who are geologists, and I might pursue this later. But what I do know is this. I know one thing. In my area of the country, we have caverns. We have caves. Those caves run all the way up and down Appalachia. In fact, there is a cave in Florida only 70 foot above sea level. It takes, for 12,000 years, these stalactites and stalagmites would only grow approximately 4 feet. They grow very slow. There are caves with giant, far longer stalactites and stalagmites are full of them, and columns. They're far bigger. And if you go just a few miles from where I live, we have a column called Mammoth. It's a gigantic column in Cathedral Caverns. Cathedral Caverns is full. If you come down here and go to Cathedral Caverns, it's got some of the most beautiful stalactites and stalagmites. That's why they call it Cathedral Caverns, because that's what it looks like when they got these things lit up inside. They're beautiful colors.
I might have been there. My father was a geologist. And when we were traveling around as kids, we'd always, do these, little, there was 2 things that he loved doing. We geology type, field geology type work. So we'd do little, vacations about doing field geology. And then he's a big Civil War buff, huge Civil War buff. I've been to almost every major Civil War battlefield in the United States.
Oh, we have a lot.
I've been to Gettysburg 9 times.
I've been there.
So I mean, it's just like he's a big Civil War buff.
Our fondness of Abraham Lincoln might differ somewhat.
Right.
But that aside, I respect your opinion.
Right. But that was my childhood, was doing geology type stuff and going to Civil War battlefields.
My friend who buried the nuke core at Fort Greely is a geologist, and he's one of my best friends, and we do talk quite a bit. So here's what I know. If you think about the pressure of water, think about this. You can form a jet with a high stream pressure of water that will cut. You can create water jets without too much real pressure that you can cut steel with. You can cut steel plate with water.
No, we were using water jet cutting for steel plates before we put them actually in the stamp die.
Bingo.
So instead of having a stamp trimmer, we would just laser cut it, and then a robot would pick it up and then place it in the stamp die, and then it'll stamp, and then it'll, multiple stamp stations will, bend it in different ways. But yeah, no, I know about water jets.
Water weighs 8 pounds per gallon. It's a lot. And once you get a few hundred feet, the pressure is enormous. In a submarine, you don't have to go very far in depth to have problems with the hull crushing, or if you have a pinprick hole, and basically having one of those water jet laser cutters, not laser, but it has the same effect, water jet cutters inside your submarine that can cut through anything, including cutting that hole bigger and impinge on other things that it would be just blasting holes through. So caverns are not sealed compartments like a submarine. They have places where air can get in and out, where people can get in and out, and other critters. So if you get a huge, deep wave of water shooting over a cavern, all the stalactites and stalagmites would be busted. Anything other than a gentle wave, just kind of rising in, rising up and down, maybe. But in terms of a tidal wave going overhead would probably crush the cavern. But if it didn't crush the cavern, it would at least be shattering stalactites and stalagmites. There's no sign inside these caverns of these kind of events other than the regular rainfall rising and falling that you expect to see inside the caverns. I know of no signs of an event like that. There wouldn't be the caverns we have. The cathedral caverns wouldn't exist. Those columns wouldn't exist. Those stalactites and stalagmites would be all shattered. So I can say that if there is such a wave, the place all these people are running to be safe up in the Rocky Mountains may not be so good, because that may be where it hits. It may go over there, and then just a little bit of it washes through and goes down the Mississippi River, and everything out here in the east side where you got these caverns is good. But there is Carlsbad caverns, so it may not be so bad. So,
but no matter what scenario, Manhattan's gone.
My friend, what are you doing there? Get out!
I know. But I get about five emails maybe every 3 days saying, "Oh, you got to get out of Manhattan." And I've had a few people say, we have a cabin here, or we have, a cottage here that you can stay, if it gets bad, and blah, blah, blah. But,
well, there was a movie called Escape from New York City, right?
Right.
You might be the chief character in the future tense of that.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens.
Well, you're bold, you're brave, but like I tell people on my channel, keep your eyes wide open, head on a swivel. And you need to especially do that, given where you're at. You're at ground zero, on one of the worst places you can be when it hits the fan. You're in a food desert. There's going to be gobs of hungry cannibals all around you.
Yeah, that's true.
Think about that, and
I have to start thinking about the backup plan pretty soon here. Diamond is offered. There's many other people that have offered too. We have property in Michigan, that we could go to. So it's I don't know.
I might have to hang you on a nail in my log barn, but
I might. I might be working on the worm farm.
There you go. Well, you could worm your way to the top.
Yeah, that's right.
It's honest work. Good work. So, well, we've been beating on this for a couple of hours now. I think we're at an hour, a couple hours now we've been into this. So, I appreciate what you're doing. And let's stay in touch, and because there's a lot of updates for what's going down here. We don't know how this is going to go down, but we're definitely watching it. It's happening around us right now. Everything we're doing right now is looking at what's happening in China and speculating how it can propagate here. And so we're having to speculate. And a lot of what we're saying is based on things that are coming from numbers that are uncertain. We're having to estimate, to speculate. We're in what you refer to as the fog of war. because
Right.
in case we know what's going down, you hear gunfire and bodies falling over and booms and blasts. And sometimes you just don't know where things are coming from or where they're going. But
Exactly.
let's try to make the most sense out of it we can so we can better prepare ourselves to get through this situation. I'm hopeful that this can just blow over. And if it does do that, let this be a lesson learned, because we do know that in Mother Nature that things can arise that can be far worse. The 1918 flu was definitely something that just come out of nowhere. And in today's society, with the mass transportation that we have, the mass travel, they didn't have international air travel back in those days, nor nowhere near the volume of international shipping and cargo. They didn't have 90% of your people back in the day lived in the country. Now that we're in cities, we have these small petri dishes rich for infection. We're better with hygiene than we used to be. That's going to be a helpful thing. So maybe, we're far ahead of people were back when the bubonic plague spread, for example. We do know a lot more. But also on the other shoe, there's a book I mentioned to you in a previous session. A fellow named Sir Martin Rees, the Astronomer Royal of Great Britain, the United Kingdom, I should say.
Martin Rees.
Yes, he did this book, Our Final Hour. He wrote this in 2003. And he talked about the dangers coming to us through terror and error, mistakenly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in a world today where just a few years ago, somebody thought it was a great, wonderful idea for experimental purposes to create human transmissible bird flu. And then they didn't just do it once, they did it twice. They did it in the Netherlands and they did it in Indonesia. Paradigm of medical research, right? Indonesia. So what if that got out? What if it's accidentally released? What if an earthquake hit the laboratory, for Pete's sake? It might be a level 4 laboratory, but holy smoke. We do know that accidents happen. That there are accidental releases. You do know that there might be a malcontented employee in there who might just be mad at the world or his employer and do something nefarious.
Right.
So there can be all kinds of hidden agendas that people could get a hold of that might make them do something they should not ought to do, or just an accident, a freak of nature, an act of nature, giant earthquake, volcano. Indonesia's got volcanoes, hurricane. Who knows what could happen? That an asteroid strike, for Pete's sake, nearby, enough to cause an earthquake and break the foundations of the facility. Things could get loose. Now that's way off the charts. It's more likely that some nefarious person would do something, or just an accident. Accidental due to incompetence release. We've seen stuff shipped across the United States that they weren't supposed to get out of the lab. They accidentally shipped it. Things happen. People make mistakes. So we shouldn't be doing this kind of research on Earth, yet they are. So it's just a matter of time until Mother Nature, or by active terror or error, something far more serious than what we're seeing could come along. What we're seeing is serious enough. Our reaction to it may be more serious. Is that by design, or is that just the way to do it? Your friend with the Peak Prosperity Channel is very much in favor of very draconian clampdown measures, of very strict quarantines to essentially extinguish the R naught activity of the virus at the inception. And medically speaking, that might be the right thing to do. It's kind of hard to swallow in a society like we have. So what does all that mean? It's hard to say going forward, but the fact of the matter is the whole notion that you should prep and get ready is absolutely good. You should. This is our insurance. It's our last ditch. Let's try to protect ourselves and our families first. Let's try to form communities so that we can be prepared to get forward as communities, form our own little tribes as we can, and networks, and move forward the best we can, because we don't know what's going to hit us. There's a lot of things that are right at us. I tell some of my followers, it's kind of like we're in the tunnel, but we're in a junction, a node where there's several tracks crossing and there's trains coming at us in different directions. So we got to know how to avoid getting hit by the trains, how to stop the trains, or how to head out the tunnel toward the light that's not the headlights of another train coming at us. So you got to really know which way you're going. And I kind of think that's where we're at. We've got a lot of different things coming at us. The holes in the Swiss cheese are lining up. We got a weakening. We definitely have a weakening magnetosphere. The diamond will tell you all about that. I'm not trying to what I was talking about with the solar events, I'm not trying to discredit anybody, including Doug Vogt. I understand, and Doug Vogt's got a technical background. He's asked questions. He's trying to come to an understanding of how we got what we got to. He's asking valid questions. I'm not sure he found all the right answers, but he's had certain epiphanies, and he in his time and a lot of the things he's finding may be right. He may be on some good stuff. But we just have a lot of research to do. We have a lot to do to really find out what's the truth of it. But the biggest truth that we all need to be aware of is it does make sense to prepare. It does make sense to get ready. It does make sense to make our society more resilient in general, to try to harden our power grid and other aspects of our society, which are way overly fragile today, to build in the redundancy, to get people acting more locally, not globally, to re-engineer who we are as a society and people for that resiliency. And that
one of my just to capstone what you were saying, and it was just by happenstance. One of the last classes that I took in my MBA in finance before I came to New York was a class on actually black swans and organizational structures.
Wow.
And at the time of the textbook that we were reading, they considered black swans they called them flying pigs. So but no, all serious, in the literature it was called flying pigs, and then because they were considered something that would never happen, but it morphed into the term black swan, which is a rare event. So, and we were studying complex systems and how they you have this false security, and the systems start failing, bam, 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 bam. And then all of a sudden a catastrophic event happens. And anyone that's, in engineering, especially in aeronautics and rocketry and all that, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Apollo 13,
yep.
Challenger,
yeah.
Columbia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Panama.
So, so it's just, we're moving right into that. That's my concern. Yeah. So that's my concern, and we just got to be vigilant. And and in terms of leap prosperity, doing the draconian measures to stop the R0. Here's the problem with the technocrats. You have to be cognizant. You can attack this with quarantine, but you can attack it with passion. There's a difference between quarantine with compassion and understanding and transparency versus quarantining with a machine gun.
We need the transparency. We definitely need that. But what's happening, if you listen to my last broadcast that I just posted this morning, where I had an interview with David DuByne, he was saying that a lot of the people that are being dragged out of their homes and they're wearing the face mask, they're doing everything they're supposed to do, but there's coincidentally people that led protests inside of Wuhan against garbage incineration facilities that they were trying to build there. So there's maybe possibly political overtones to some of the things going on. Maybe they're using this quarantine as cover for accomplishing other political aims. So that's why we need the transparency. And in the fact you call for transparency in this, the fact that you call for transparency in anything developed in the area of vaccines is pretty positive that you're on the good side. Because the other side never wants transparency. It's always to stay cloaked, like our friend Mike Blingenberger. He actually asked me to cloak him here because he didn't. He would get aggravated.
I totally agree with you. We just got to work the problem. If we don't work the problem and work together, we're going to have some dark times ahead.
Well, that's what's nice is we've invented a network. We've identified friends and allies, and I consider everyone in this network sphere friend and allies. We don't all agree on point to point, but that's okay. We don't have to. We just have to have the same general idea, the same general thrust, as long as we're all in this together. And I would include Doug Vogt in that. Even though I probably picked on him more than anybody. And Diamond is great. I love him. I love to hear him talk. Definitely
he's a very nice guy. He's a nice guy.
He's a nice
and he's
guy.
very smart. He's very smart.
He's doing his greenhouses. He's doing his earthship. They're all spot on. He's gardening. He's trying to get the high point. He's doing good things. He's out there talking stuff. He's talking grand solar minimum. He's talking stuff that gets bullets thrown at him. He paints a target on his back to do what he's doing. For that, I admire him greatly. So the fact that I may, question some of the effects of some of these possible things, that's just a point of discussion. I don't know.
Well, this is where people need to realize that when you're living in the scientific world, you have to have that debate to get to the truth. Because if you don't have that debate, you don't get the synthesis. You have to have the thesis, the antithesis, and then the synthesis.
And that helps you appreciate where things are really going, because if you accept something that's dogma, then you may really miss the boat on something. So there's things going on. Then they are seeing symptoms, and there are symptoms that point to catastrophic events. There definitely are catastrophic events in the world's history. There's super volcanoes that go off. Toba nearly wiped humanity out 72,000 years ago. Yellowstone is cooking. We don't know when Yellowstone will or will not go off. We have no idea. It's only 40,000 years overdue. Might be another 40,000 years or 4 seconds from now. I don't know. Some people are out there, it's going to blow any second. Some people are it ain't never going to blow in our lifetimes. So what's the truth? I don't know. But I do know that it is a super volcano, and one of these days it may blow. So do I want to live on top of it? Probably not.
Right.
Probably not. When I visited Mount Shasta, I'm sitting there reading the facts and how this thing blows up every 200 years and wipes out everything within so many hundred miles. I'm looking, I see farms, I see houses. I don't think I want to live there.
Right.
But that's just me. Of course, my friend, you're in New York City. And I got to admit, even Alabama, I'm more rural than you, but there's a lot of
every single movie, New York is destroyed. I mean, you really think about it. Every single Hollywood movie, New York is destroyed. I mean, how many times does New York gets destroyed?
New York is the financial capital of the West. It makes it a major target.
Right.
The fact that it was hit in 9/11 did not surprise me. The fact that the World Trade Center was hit did not surprise me. I expected it, especially after the 93 event. In fact, when I went to New York City the last time, I made it a point to see the Twin Towers. I got there too late to go up in the towers. I went around in the basement area, and on my way out, I drove by them and took photographs, and I was totally enthralled by it. But the whole notion I had was one of these days they're not going to be there. That's why I really wanted to see it, because I really had that feeling that one day those towers were not going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole idea that people were surprised by it blows my mind, because I was expecting something like that. It's a target, and New York is a target by virtue. My oldest daughter was a theater major. She wanted to go to New York City. And I said, I'll never sleep if you go to New York City. And so she changed her mind. She's in Houston now.
So you sleep better? You sleep better now? Because she's in New York.
A little bit. She's outside north of Houston, where they're much higher level elevation wise. But and I got my youngest daughter was all in the theater and opera, but I got her to go into computer science.
Right.
So she's in Bloomberg's profession.
Right.
Well, she's actually working as an intern engineer for a local aerospace company.
Great.
Yeah. So she's finishing up her last term in college. So I love my children. They're all great. They're all wonderful. They all work hard. They all excel in their own ways. So in any event, yeah, my friend, there's better places to be. Now, maybe you've got something you can get done there, but just know that if it hits the fan, it's going to be hard to get out. So
very true. But if there's
before it happens,
I'm a firm believer, if there's a will, there's a way.
My daddy always taught me that exact expression.
Wow. So
if there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, we do have a lot of similarities. I was interested in science since I was a little kid. Both science, and I've always been fascinated by the Civil War. I used to talk to all the old folks whose aunts and uncles and parents remembered, the real old folks when I was a kid. And it was just the stories you would hear were fascinating. They were really quite a bit different from what you often hear from history books, but very, very fascinating.
Right.
So In any event, we've gone on for a long time. We're probably way off what most people are interested in here for listening to this video about. But the operative thing is, to the listener, the message is, this stuff is out and about in this country. It's already here. It's moving around, and it's spreading. Probably low levels right now. Probably in certain pockets and areas first and foremost. But it's going to spread fast and far. We don't know how fast, how far, or who's got it, because the testing is inadequate at this time. The reporting is inadequate at this time. So all you can do is take precautions. You can take the preventative precautions of personal protective equipment, of face mask and gloves, of using isopropyl alcohol, of just not touching the surfaces everybody else touches, the doorknobs, the handles, and trying to avoid crowded places as much as you can. And as we go forward in the next few weeks, I'd say be even more vigilant about it. At some point very soon, I'd say don't even go to restaurants. I did go to a restaurant last night, but I'm thinking the next week or two I may stop. I'm trying to start stocking up on groceries and things right now, because I'm thinking in a week or two I don't want to be out shopping. And at some point in the very near future, I got to make the decision: do I go to work? Do I go to work again? When do I stop? So these are all things we have to face on an individual basis based on what's going on in our community, or as best as we understand it, and hope we understand it well enough. That is why we need to be aware. That's why we need our eyes wide open and head on a swivel, so we can assess these things and hope that we assess it properly. But in the end, probably all of us have a greater chance of being infected than not, no matter what we do. So the single best thing you can do is keep your immune system strong. Eat good, nutritious food, and take vitamins, antivirals, do the stuff that you have to do to keep your health in top-notch condition. That's the most you can do. And we don't know how bad this is going to be, and if it hits and takes a bunch of people out, who's going to be on the other side. Just do everything you can to protect yourself and your family, your loved ones, your communities, and hopefully we can shake it off on the other side and go again. And just take the hope and flame forward from your heart and your soul. We are beings. We do have the divinity, the spark from the greater creator, that he breathed life into our nostrils at some point, and we carry that forward. So there is hope. There always will be. As long as we got breath in our lungs and can breathe it, we have hope.
That's right.
So stay there, stay with the hope. We'll have more prayer sessions in the near future. We will keep going that forward. I'll do a lot more videos about what you can do. Paul and I will be on here fairly regularly, I suppose, just looking at where we're at, trying to figure it out. In this fog of war, where we're at, what do we need to do? So that's what the commitment I'll make to you is that we'll try to keep this gauged. And we may one day say, I wouldn't go out for anything now. So pay attention. We're all in here trying to do the best thing that we can do. Now, you can throw rocks for this, that, and oh, his hair is purple, he's got a widget on his head or something. I don't know. My ink pen's black, so I might be with Darth Vader. Oh, but it's got a silver point on it, so I don't know who's that. So
Right.
I got a Swiss Army knife. You know, you might think I'm a commie. No, definitely not a commie. If you listen to what we're talking about freedom, liberty, transparency, maintaining our faith, our families, our communities, our liberties. That's not what you get from the powers that be, my friend. So listen to where we come from in our hearts and our souls as we appeal to you. And know that we're here to try to help you figure out how to get through all these things so that you can survive, thrive, and stay on the high. And I do hope that we all get there on the other side, as many of us as possible. And if there's holes in what's left, you know, in the fog of war, you lose people, but you keep going forward. If you lose your right hand, your left hand, you keep going. You keep going. And like Paul, he's taking a lot of flack. What I told him before this video is I said, it's like you're the B-17 pilot. You just stay on course. You can remember your target. We're all taking a lot of flack right now. So there's going to be people that aren't going to like this. There's going to be people who say, oh, well, he's this, he's that. Well, you know, okay, it makes you feel important, makes you feel good, makes you feel big, makes you feel smart. Hooray for you. But don't stop the pilot from achieving target, because the target is to help us all. The target is to get us through this. The target is to survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive. That is the target. And staying out of the hive is definitely not in fitting with the philosophies of some of those entities that we have discussed here, because their objective is the hive. Or so it seems, according to some.
Right.
If you know what I mean. Who knows? It may just all be that things fall together. Birds of a feather flock together. He who has a goal makes a rule, and and on, right? So that's how it works. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolute. You wind up with these kind of systems in any evolution of society in time without proper checks and balances. And even with proper checks and balances, eventually you get there. So sometimes you just have to refresh the system.
That's right.
And I think Paul talked about that in our last videos. He quoted Thomas Jefferson. So I think making quotes like that is real strong indicators of where people come from. So, my friends, I don't have a lot to add at this point. Paul, do you have anything to add? Final closing words? Anything that bugs you, concerns you more than anything? Anything you think?
I think right now, I think it's very important to get your food preparation, your medicine preparation, your toiletries, because it's very possible within the next week and a half, you, especially in a populated area, you're maybe in an outbreak area and lockdown. Use this time wisely and get prepared.
It'd be a good time to join Costco, to join Sam's Club. Might cost you $40, but by the time you buy a bunch of bulk stuff, even for 1 or 2 purchases, you paid for the cart, because you can buy stuff so cheaply there. If you can't get to Costco or Sam's Club, go to the grocery stores, wherever you can get to. Buy big bags of dried beans, buy big bags of rice, buy big bags of macaroni and cheese. You know, buy your ramen noodles. Get your peanut butter, for Pete's sake. And check out prepwithgreg.com, because you can get 25-year food storage items there. And there's specials. There's a special for the 2-week supply. It's roughly $70 off right now. And there's $100 off for the 4-week supply. And if you go buy a year's worth, well, you probably already have a couple years worth for everybody in your family if you can afford it. But if you buy a year's worth, that works out about a little bit less than $2.75 per meal. That is an incredible deal for food that lasts 25 years, my friends. So it's the price wise, when it may be a lot to buy it all at once, maybe you buy a little bit of time, the smaller stuff, but overall it's probably a lot better than what you're buying right now, unless you're only eating ramen noodles. And then again too, watch my videos on how to eat from the wild greens outdoors. Do watch those. Watch and you know, you may be up north. Greg, I don't hate wild greens. You got pine trees. I covered that in videos too. Even if you're in the West, you got pine trees. And there's other channels. Go look around for resources and sources for information about how to survive off what you can get out of the wild and how to bug out, bug in. I'll be talking more and more about that in the future. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, click the update notification bell. If you're not subscribed to Paul's channel, subscribe to it. I have had some people say, oh, he's not a doctor. He has a PhD. Having a PhD entitles you to be a doctor. It may not be a medical doctor, but he has studied the same amount. That's how you get a PhD, my friends. A PhD is a doctorate. That's what it is. So that's why he wants to be called Dr. Paul Cottrell. He has earned that degree, my friends. He's there. And he's working on a medical degree too, by the way. So if you got any questions about that, he talks about that in his videos. He tells exactly who he is, where he's at, and what he's doing. There's no
I've been very transparent to everybody, very transparent. And the thing is that it's published all over the place, you know, on Twitter and on, you know, Facebook and on, you know, my website. My bio is all over the place. It's very easy to just read it and realize what my credentials are and why I have a certain unique perspective on this. I mean, because of these different disciplines that I've taken over the years to learn. I have truly a unique perspective.
That's what I like about Paul. He has researched many different disciplines, which makes him what we call a polymath. So I teased one of my friends. One of my friends said on stage, I'm a polymath. And I got it behind and said, well, I'm a polynomial.
Right.
Mathematician would know what I meant by that, but I was, you know, making fun of my buddy who very proudly announced he was a polymath. Well, I might be a polynomial, or maybe I'm just a monomial. But anyway, if you know algebra, you know what I mean. I'm not going to explain it today. But I got Paul laughing anyway. So it's a mathematical joke. But in any event, he has a persistent perspective, as I do. My background, look, I grew up on a farm in the South. So I grew up a hillbilly farmer who was always interested in science and engineering and space all my life. I work in aerospace. I've done engineering. I've worked in defense. I've been in the Army. I've done rocket design, robotic systems design, software. I've been involved in the mechanical side of that. I've got the electrical engineering background. I've designed industrial machines. There's machines that I've designed. There's test program sets I designed that are sent out around the world. I've sent machines to Italy, to South Korea, a good portion of the International Space Station design. And yes, it does orbit the spherical Earth, around the Earth. You can go outside and go over and you put the telescope and there's no balloons holding it up, my flat Earth friends, as some of you try to contend. It is in space and it orbits the Earth. And much of the design in nodes 2 and 3 of the electrical and data systems outline, I did. So it's been up there for a couple of decades now. So I feel proud to see my stuff flying in space. I don't have much longer to be there, but I've had a definite fingerprint in what's going on there. And I've been a space advocate all my life. I'm also an advocate of resiliency. I'm an advocate of survival. I'm an advocate of people growing their own. I'm an advocate of survivalism, an advocate of prepping. Why? Because I have a system level perspective and I understand that society is very fragile and that it's in a bad spot right now. The holes in Swiss cheese are lining up for a total system collapse, for total system failure. And that's why I tell you, we better be aware and don't be scared, be prepared. We can do it. We can do it together. I am a prepper. I am a survivalist. I've been in the Army. I used to love to camp out, hike. I spent all my time in the woods when I was a kid. I read Yo Gibbons books when I was a teenager. So I am definitely a guy who loves the outdoors, the wilderness, and Mother Nature. But I also understand that we could have a future in space, but we've got to work together. There's a bright future we could have. There's many things and places we could go. The potentials are limitless, but we got to be smart how we get there and not let some of the idiots knock us out because they're on nefarious, whatever agendas they may have. Let's stick together and take us to a bold, new, bright future. And together, I'm sure we can get there.
Great.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's it. That's
well, I get off my soapbox. I'm sure now some people will be throwing arrows at me, but have fun at it. I'm a big boy, if you hadn't noticed already. Anyway, Paul, I really appreciate it. I look forward to hearing from you again soon. Maybe we can talk again this same time next week. It might be a little bit of a rough time for me. This is my worm harvest day. I got to run outside and get busy. And sometime I got to put this video up. But Paul, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for all you do, for who you are, and for being out there to push for transparency in the system. That tells me who you really are. And it gives me faith, hope, and confidence when I see people like yourself and know that we've got good people on our sides, on our flanks as we move forward, trying to preserve our health and liberty and prosperity as a society. So I thank you for being on the show and look forward to our next engagement. To the audience, I say thank you for watching. You've been on this show for some time now. And if you're here and you've maintained it through the whole limit of the show, say, hi, Greg, I did it all. At the end, and I'll know what you mean, and everybody else will be scratching their head. And I'll say, good for them. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Have a prosperous 2020. Thank you.